Hey guys, it's Sam, and in this video I want to talk about this portrait sketch that I did earlier this year, and just how I approach drawing portraits typically, and also don't mind my voice, I'm still sick, #sad. Anyway, so this is a graphite portrait I'm doing, and I have a link in the description to the reference photo if you'd like to sort of see what I'm doing and sort of follow along. I wasn't aiming for accuracy here, I just sort of wanted to loosely practice sketch and just have some fun in the sketchbook. And whenever you do a study, you don't have to make yourself stress to make it perfect and 100% accurate and all that sort of stuff. Sometimes you can just sort of be loose or be close or just do whatever or do something, completely different but still inspired by the reference. So definitely try not to put too much pressure on yourself when you're doing studies or just having fun or just art in general, right? Art should be fun, right? Always. That's number one priority. Art should be fun. So I just want to have fun with this portrait. And so starting off with sketching portraits, I typically start with a circle for the cranium. This is the skull, and I feel like it helps whenever you're drawing anything to understand the underlying layers of that subject. So if I'm drawing a person or if I'm drawing an animal, I feel like it helps me to be a little bit familiar with the skeleton, a little bit familiar with the muscles, and sort of build things up from there. And you could also take this with, anything that you draw. If you're drawing buildings, it can be helpful to know the basics of perspectives, or at least some understanding of perspective. Or if you're drawing, perspectives in everything, right? So even if you're drawing landscapes, things without man-made structures in them, having some idea of perspective or stuff like that, I think can be helpful. So, having something to build your knowledge off of, I think can be helpful when you approach certain studies. But yeah, not you have to sort of thing, but I think it can be helpful, especially if you're aiming for something towards realism, or if you want to do a style where you can break that realism in a sort of fun way. Anyway, so back to this portrait. Starting with a circle for the skull, just kind of marking the placement there. And then from there, I am staying very loose and just making markings for placement. And since I'm using a graphite pencil here, I can easily erase and fix things. So not a big deal if I mess up. And so mostly I'm just trying to make sure stuff is about in the right place. Again, wasn't aiming for 100% accuracy here. So where about do the eyes go? Where about does the nose and mouth go? Sort of thing. So making sure that the relationship between everything is sort of matching up and working out. And I keep a light hand, so I don't draw very heavy-handed. In general, I wouldn't recommend drawing with a very heavy hand just because it's not the best for your hand, fingers, and wrist and arm and sort of stuff. It's not the most healthy of things. So if you find you're pressing down really hard with your pencil, I would try and be a little bit more conscious of that and see if you can loosen your grips and find some way to loosen your grip. Maybe switch to pens for a while, since pens can be pretty good at just being dark right away, and so you don't have to press so hard to get that dark. Or perhaps using higher grade pencils, so not just 2H, or 2B or whatever. You could switch to, or charcoal, you could switch to charcoal, that too. But just find ways to sort of loosen that grip so it's a little bit nicer on your body. But anyway, so keeping a light hand can be helpful, and also erasing easier. And so when I make those placement markings down, and if I screw up, I can quickly and easily just erase and redraw, sort of thing. And I keep also with basic shapes. So I'm not going in immediately drawing in eyelashes, eyebrows, all the details on the lips and everything, all the line work in the ears, all of that. I'm not doing that right away. My focus number one is about proportions, about placement, all of that sort of stuff. I'm just sort of trying to build the house from the ground up. And I don't want to start with the roof shingles, I want to place, the roof needs to be there first, and in order for the roof to be there, everything else below it needs to be there first. So that's how I approach art. I know some people can just draw that stuff right away. That's not me. I need to have some sort of structure beneath that. So that's how I start there. Just sort of marking circles for the eyes, and then I start adding in more eye details. And one of the last things I do are marking in, details inside the actual iris or the eyelashes, stuff like that. And once I start to get more confident of the placement of this feels correct, or correct enough for how far I want to do this study. I think this study took me about 40 minutes. So this is time-lapsed a bit. But yeah, I think in total the time was 40 minutes. And if it looks a little different, it's because I used my phone to record this. I just wanted to try recording on my phone just to see how it goes. So hopefully it looks all okay and everything. But yeah, so once I get those correct placements down, then I can more confidently draw with a little bit of harder pressure to get the darker lines going and clean things up a little bit. This sketch is still pretty messy, but that's mostly because I knew I was going to come in with some shading. So I started with the hair, obviously. We're doing that right now, or about that. And I keep a pretty light hand when it comes to the sketching. I'm at this point more familiar and also more liking of charcoal. I haven't done like a graphite portrait in the longest time. And if you follow my YouTube channel, like, you know my adventures with graphite portraits for years now. And I'm just over it, you know? So I was keeping it pretty light here as far as the shading goes. I just sort of wanted to emphasize a few spots, but not go like crazy dark. And also, I find with graphite, if you want to try and go crazy dark, it gets a bit of a sheen, and I don't really like the look of that sheen. So I was trying not to reach that point. I'm also using my finger here to blend, which is fine, I think, for like something you're not going to care about. But if you're trying to do a more serious thing, I know there's a lot of artists, even professionals, who like don't care and they'll use their finger. I'm just not big on it, just because I feel like you have less control over how things smudge and blend, and you also can potentially ruin the artwork with your skin oils. So that's not just something I like to do or think about or worry about, so I'd rather just use other blending tools. My favorites are probably just blending stumps. Or tissues. I don't usually use tissues as much anymore. They get a bit messy. I mostly prefer tortillons. But yeah, using those are my preference for blending nowadays. But just because this was in a sketchbook and I wasn't really going to care about it, I was like, sure, I'm not going to go out of my way to find some tools and stuff to use. I'm just going to use my fingers. They're right there and they're free, readily available to use. So not a big deal for me to do that. And so I'm sort of just now adding in some of the shading just where I see, you know, the light casting on her face, and then just emphasizing it with adding those shadows and just using the white of the paper to act as that, you know, peak highlight point. And since this is a portrait practice sketch study thing, most of my time was spent on this portrait, on the actual face itself. However, the photo reference did include the hand beneath it, and I was like, all right, I guess I can go ahead and include the hand in this too. Why not? And so I did a little bit like at the end, sort of rush in the rest of that hand. And then I know I'm talking ahead of it, but you know, it is what it is. And I also filled in a little bit of space in the background just to sort of have her not just like floating there in space. I don't know. It looked a little bit weird. Sometimes I like to add a background just to make something pop or stand out, or just add a little bit more interest. Because sometimes I feel like leaving just the white of the paper, you know, it's a choice, but sometimes, you know, you want to change that choice. You want to pick a different choice. And so that's what I tend to like to do. So that's what I'm doing right now, is just sort of adding in some scratchy lines. And I didn't want it super smooth. I wanted a bit of that scratchy look, because I was like, I want this to be a bit looking like a sketch. I didn't really want it to look like a polished thing. So that's why I kept it to be pretty messy there. And in general, when you're approaching things that are difficult or that you find difficult, breaking things down into simple shapes, I have a video series on my channel talking all about the fundamentals of art and how to pretty much draw anything if you follow those guidelines for the fundamentals. So I'll link that in the description down below, and also in the card up top. I'll link that there too, and I recommend checking that out. And if you'd like to see me dive into another portrait where I used a ballpoint pen, I have that over on my Ko-fi page. I'll link that in the description. So that one is real-time, full real-time with voiceover, talking about more tips and stuff on drawing portraits and just drawing with ballpoint pen and just drawing in general. I ramble a lot on my Ko-fi videos. So if you'd like to check that out, link is in the description, and I'd really appreciate the support. But yeah, hopefully you found this video helpful and interesting. But yeah, if there's any other videos you'd like to see from me this year, let me know in the comments down below. I definitely want to get back into doing more YouTube stuff. I feel more into the vibe again, more into the mood, despite the fact that I've been sick. I'm over being sick. But hopefully I was still understandable despite my nasaliness. But yeah, anyway, so thanks for watching. Again, Ko-fi link in the description, reference photo for this in the description. And yeah, hope you guys have been having an awesome new year so far, an awesome January so far. And thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you all next time. Okay, bye!